A young country eager to grab every opportunity, a country that wants to compete with the best in the world needs a very strong base in education. Higher education, of course, being as key as primary education and secondary education as well. But where do we stand when we look at higher education? We have some key players with us who are going to look at just how far India has moved the road ahead and the key question, if this is the best time to be involved in higher education in India. Well, the esteemed panel with me, Dr. Raj Singh, Vice Chancellor of GD Goenka University. Thanks for being with us. Also, Dr. Vijay Gupta, Vice Chancellor of Sharda University. Thanks, sir, for being with us. Vinay Pastrija, Chairman, WLC College, India, and Dr. Sanjeev Marwa, Director, JK Business School. Thanks all so much for taking our time to be a part of this panel. Dr. Raj Singh, first you, what do you believe is the single biggest achievement when we talk about higher education in India and the biggest failure or setback?
Well, if you look at higher education today, we have reached about 706 universities, including about 205 private universities. Today, private sector contributes about 59% of higher education, and this percentage is only likely to grow.
Right.
When you talk about unemployability of the graduates, and unemployability in the context of a very large number of youth in a country is not a very good indicator.
Right.
And that's where the role of universities and private institutions becomes even more important. And I'm referring to the employability.
Right.
The key challenge, therefore, is to make graduates employable, and therefore education has to be very close to real life.
True.
And in that sense, the teaching has to change. Public sector somehow has failed to respond to these growing requirements of the market as well as the graduates. And unfortunately, when we talk about quality, we always talk about private sector.
Right.
Public sector is never talked about as if they already have a quality. I think the paradigm shift needed today is that...
Of course, we have the key institutions that have set their own benchmarks.
There are very few in number. When you look at the larger, when you look at the larger number to be trained, I mean, that's minuscule, I would say. Yeah. And therefore, we need to start talking about quality in the context of all institutions, whether private or public.
Right.
Today, if you look at the numbers, we have about 30 million enrollments in higher education. By 2020, the government wants to reach about 40 million to reach that magic figure of GR of 30, which is now around 21–22%. That needs about 10 million more seats in next 6 years.
Right.
And if you look at 2030 vision, we need to double this.
Right.
Means another 40 million, we need to add about 71 million will be the seats required in higher education.
Right. Now, who is going to sort of step up to fill this gap? That
absolutely.
Right. You, of course, raised many points there. Mr. Pastrija, if I could get you in at this stage, there's no dearth of youngsters wanting the best. There are, of course, lots of families, India traditionally being a country where parents will go the extra mile, raise the funds, try and do their best to get their child an education. The scene also maybe slightly, very slowly, but also changing for the girl child. But coming back to education, the focus has been, even in our political parties in the last election, we saw the youth being the big focus. But where do you believe the failing lies when we talk about higher education? A lot of the issues that Dr. Raj Singh there mentioned, quality, of course, being, is that really the biggest concern even for you?
More than that, it's what are we teaching even at the best institutions?
Right.
Are we teaching something that's relevant? Are we teaching something that really works in the market? So then there needs to be a soul searching on the entire, larger picture of education.
Right.
Because what we have over there is our universities, top grade universities, very good. But most of the people going out after that.
Right.
So we have the IITs where everybody goes out. We have the top institutions where everybody goes out, travels abroad.
Right.
There are issues of content, there are issues of who's teaching, what they are teaching.
Right.
What is the relevance of this to the market, etc., etc., etc.
Dr. Gupta, where do you believe is the one player where private players can make the biggest difference? Like Dr. Raj Singh said, of course, they're shouldering a lot of the responsibility, more than half the responsibility now with the private players. They have stepped up to the plate. But what do you believe is the one key area where they can impact the maximum change?
You see, the problem with private education is twofold. One is the cost of education. Any good education costs so much that it cannot be sustained on tuition fee alone, unless the tuition fee goes of the order of 4 to 5 lakhs per year, which how many Indians can afford that? You see, in an institution like an IIT, the cost of educating a student is 4 lakhs on direct cost. It does not include the infrastructure costs which have already been paid for. a private industry will have to pay for that infrastructure
Start from scratch.
Right. So it's a very difficult thing. And the second challenge comes in is the image. Good faculty does not like at the moment to make a career in a private university, because a private university is looked down upon generally.
Right. That's a good point. Dr. Marwah, if I could ask you, when we talk about the gap between what the private players are providing and what the other state-backed institutions have on offer, do you believe this is a gap that sort of can be bridged?
It's a huge gap, and I think the narrative for a very large country like ours have gone horribly wrong. We should not be discussing private versus public.
Right.
It has to be industry participation in higher education, which is abysmally low.
Right.
And most of it is lip service. And that's where probably, we have gone wrong. The industry has never shown keen interest in terms of setting up institutions. And that's where the percentage of students finding challenges in employment comes up from. And also, the twin problem of Indian education system is well known, and I agree with Professor that first, of course, is the reach. We have just about 13.6 GER, which has to go to 30%. And perhaps you do not require too many institutions to reach that level. I think we have a fairly robust infrastructure for higher education in place. What is required is perhaps the second shift or higher enrollments within the same infrastructure. The second, of course, is the quality challenge, and that's huge. Almost about 50% of the posts of faculty members across the country, including private and public, remains vacant at any point of time.
Right.
So half the faculty is not available on roll.
Right.
That's a challenge which this industry has to answer. And I think coming back to the first point, higher education system and challenges it faces, I think there is a governance issue that needs to be addressed. We are, of course, the largest education system in the world.
Right.
However, the quality challenge of 50% faculty post remaining vacant requires that the entire system needs to be having a relook. The entire governance system of how to involve industry into education system is a big challenge. The governance system actually requires that.
Right. How to sort of get corporates involved, how to get industry involved. We keep speaking about this, Mr. Pasricha, but very few, like the point that Dr. Marwah was making, very few people actually step up to the plate. So why do you believe that? I mean, there still seems to be, despite all the talk, there still seems to be a reluctance.
Because education is meant to be a charitable activity. You cannot have for-profit universities. You cannot have industry in it. So most of these private universities are actually for-profit pretending to be charities. So they're taking out money from all sorts of, which is why the
business of education is now well known.
Yeah, so they're actually businesses masquerading as charities. So which is the dichotomy? So no matter what they say, people will not look at them with great respect, because it's actually they're saying something and doing something else. The moment the government decides that higher education can be for profit, there will be industry, there will be enough capacity that can be generated. That's one. It has to be made for profit for any honest person to invest in it. Why would I invest in it if there's no money to be made in it, right? That's one. The second thing is that we need to have a paradigm shift in the way we think. Technology has changed immensely over the last 5 years. We have this Coursera, we have the massive online MOOCs platform, right, where you can teach 40 million people for free. Right, the best universities in the world have put their curriculum in. There are videos available, there is contact, there is seminars, webinars. So you need to move beyond brick and mortar. You need to move beyond traditional concepts. So, मेरे पास faculty नहीं है, not so many people are not available. Well, one good professor can teach 1 million people.
Right. Dr. Gupta, I see you nodding. You agree?
Yeah, I agree almost with everything that you said. Brick and mortar university is not the only way to go about this. But I have my doubts about the MOOCs, the massive online, the open courseware. The research currently points out, all the research currently points out that the learning out of those is kind of restricted. There is the contact with the teacher. Most of the learning in any good place, learning takes place in the corridors, not in the classroom.
Right.
So the loneliness of a MOOC learner is so big and so frightening that people don't learn.
Right.
The largest number of registrations are for MOOC courses in Coursera and edX are from India.
Right.
But the percentage of people completing those courses is the lowest from India.
Right.
There are other reasons besides that it is a lonely place. The other reason is that preparation for doing those courses is so poor that we have. Our schools do not train our students to be critical thinkers. There's too much stress on content, not on the thinking process that goes behind learning. And so that causes a lot of people to drop out from the
So you're
programs.
saying there's a whole host of causes, but Dr. Mawar, then does the answer lie in a little bit of this and a little bit of that, perhaps no great shift, but you know, the point that Mr. Pasricha is making, that you don't sort of need to stick only to traditional models that have worked for you in the past, but look beyond, expand your thought, expand your horizon. But do you see us sort of doing enough of that, even in the years ahead?
I agree with you. In fact, the jobs for 2020 probably, have not been even created as on today.
Right.
If I do not update my curriculum on an annual basis, I could be probably, suffering from what Indian higher education has suffered for the last couple of decades, where the curriculums have been changed at an average
Haven't
of
evolved
6
with
to
the
7
needs
years.
of the times.
6 to 7 years is the average of curriculum updation in this country.
Right.
So that's one challenge which needs to be addressed, and I think we need to involve industry in a big way in terms of updation of curriculums. The present generation is very different from the students of the 10 years back. They are the most education minded generation I've ever seen, and perhaps historically also it is researched that is the most education minded generation which has ever emerged.
Right.
So there is huge respect for education, but this generation has emerged from a different landscape.
Right.
They are networked, addressing SMS in the classroom has to be acceptable. They think everybody has a fair chance to represent themselves. They think anybody can be a star. So this generation is very different from what we have taught in the past. We also need as institution to get adapted to the present set of generation, because the kind of jobs that are going to be created few years from now would be keeping in mind this generation, and
that's
not the one we thought about a decade back.
That's an important point you're making, that perhaps we haven't even thought about what the kind of jobs that this generation is going to fit into, perhaps that all those new profiles that are yet to be created. And the important point, and perhaps heartening point also that you're making, is that the most education oriented, so this is not the one that's sort of shying away from acquiring their skills. That's a great point to take a break on. We're looking at the state of higher education in India. Back in